warm and welcoming. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cozy English Corner. I am Alex, and I am very glad you are spending your time with us today, curious and thoughtful. Today, we are looking at two very common words in the English language, should and must. On the surface, it is a simple grammar lesson, but as always, we are going to look a bit deeper, friendly. Joining me today is Harper. Harper, thank you for being here.
Appreciative and calm? Thank you for having me, Alex. It is a pleasure to be here in the studio with you.
Observational. It is a rather gray morning here in Columbus, Ohio. We are at that strange point in the year where it might be sunny at breakfast, but we could easily see snow by the afternoon.
Amused, I understand completely. I wore a heavy winter coat to walk near the Olentangy Trail this morning, and by the time I walked back, I was carrying it over my arm.
Directing the conversation, that is standard Ohio weather for you. But let us focus on our topic, should and must. Harper, when you hear these two words, what comes to your mind first?
Reflective. To be honest, the first thing I feel is pressure. They are small words, but they carry a lot of weight in our daily lives.
Authoritative and clear. That is exactly why I wanted to talk about them. From a structural perspective, should is used to give advice or talk about expectations. For example, you should drink more water. It is a recommendation. Informative. On the other hand, must expresses a strict obligation or a necessary rule. You must have a passport to travel internationally. You do not have a choice in that situation.
Analytical, that makes sense grammatically. But psychologically, I think we confuse them all the time. We treat things that are just advice as if they are absolute rules.
Curious? Wait, really? Can you explain what you mean by that?
Personal and serious. Well, consider my own life. A few years ago, I was working at a large corporate agency downtown. The Midwestern culture here is very focused on stability and traditional success. Vulnerable, I constantly told myself, I must climb the corporate ladder. I must buy a house in the suburbs before I turn 30. I used the word must for things that were actually just societal shoulds.
Empathetic? I understand. You elevated a piece of cultural advice into a strict personal law. And when you do that, the pressure becomes unbearable. Intellectual. This actually connects to a very interesting psychological concept. Have you ever heard of the psychoanalyst Karen Horney? She coined a term called the tyranny of the should.
Intrigued. The tyranny of the should? I have not heard of it, but it sounds incredibly accurate. What does it mean?
Educational. She theorized that people create an idealized image of themselves. To reach that impossible image, they create a list of relentless demands. I should be richer. I should be thinner. I should never feel anxious. Insightful. When we fail to meet these shoulds, we feel intense guilt and self-hatred. Another psychologist, Albert Ellis, even called it masturbation. The act of making yourself miserable with too many musts.
Realizing and honest? That is fascinating and honestly a bit difficult to hear because it describes my mid-20s perfectly. I was exhausted by my own expectations.
Strategic? Let us talk about that exhaustion. For our listeners learning English, understanding how to use these words correctly can actually help them set better boundaries in their own lives. Instructive. If a friend says, you should work late to impress the boss, you need to recognize that this is just a suggestion. The structure is subject plus should plus base verb. You should work. It is not a law.
Empowering! Exactly! You have the power to say, I hear advice, but I am going to go home and rest. The word should leaves room for your personal choice.
Informative? Now, let us contrast that with must. In standard American English, we actually do not use the word must very often in daily conversation to talk about our own actions. Questioning. If an American needs to go to the grocery store, they rarely say, I must buy milk. What do they usually say, Harper?
Helpful. We usually say, I have to buy milk or I need to buy milk. Using must in that context sounds very dramatic or perhaps a bit old-fashioned.
Emphasizing that is a crucial point for our learners. Have to and need to are the standard conversational phrases. We save must for formal rules, legal requirements, or very urgent warnings.
Practical. For example, if you are driving on Interstate 71 during a heavy snowstorm, a police officer might say you must use your headlights. It is a matter of safety and law.
Transitioning smoothly, perfect example. And this brings us to the negative forms, which is where many people make mistakes. The difference between must not and do not have to. Curious. Harper, how would you explain the difference if a client asked you about deadlines?
Clear and professional. If I tell a client, you do not have to review this design today, it means it is optional. They can do it today if they want, but tomorrow is also fine. There is no pressure. Serious. But if I say, you must not share this design with the public yet, that is a strict prohibition. It means sharing it is absolutely forbidden because the project is confidential.
Approving. That is an excellent way to frame it. Must not means doing the action will cause a problem or break a rule. Do not have to simply removes the obligation. Educational. Let us look at another common grammar mistake. Many learners try to put the word to after should or must. So they say, I must to go. Why is this incorrect?
Explaining clearly, because should and must are modal verbs. They must be followed directly by the base form of the main verb, without to. So it is simply I must go or I should go.
Authoritative, exactly. No to, knowing, and no id. It never changes, regardless of who the subject is. He must go, not he must go. Empathetic and deep. But Harper, I want to pivot back to the emotional weight of these words. You mentioned leaving the corporate agency. What fears kept you awake at night during that transition?
Vulnerable. It was terrifying. When you run your own business, the line between should and must becomes very blurry. The fear of financial instability is real. Anxious reflection? I would lie awake at night thinking, I should be working on my portfolio right now. I should be networking more. And beneath that was a deeper fear. If I fail, how will I pay my taxes?
Philosophical. That is the undiscussed pain of independence. You trade the external musts of a boss for the internal shoulds of an entrepreneur. And sometimes our own internal voice is much harsher than any manager.
Resolute?
Yes, the cognitive load is immense. You are constantly deciding what is truly necessary.
I had to learn to categorize my tasks. Paying the mortgage is a must. Answering a non-urgent email at midnight is only a should, and often a should not.
Supportive. That distinction saves people from burnout. Learning to downgrade a must to a should allows you to breathe. And grammatically, it softens the tone of your communication as well. Practical. If you tell your partner, you must clean the kitchen, it sounds like an order. It creates conflict. But if you say, we really should clean the kitchen before tomorrow, it feels cooperative.
Calm and insightful. Exactly. Language shapes our reality. When I changed how I spoke to myself, replacing I must with I choose to, or it would be good if I could, my anxiety decreased significantly.
Educational. Let us touch upon another use of should that often confuses English learners. We also use should to talk about expectations based on probability. For example, the train should arrive at noon.
Amused, right. In that case, you are not giving the train advice. You are looking at the schedule and predicting what is likely to happen.
Clear and illustrative. Yes. If I mail a letter to Cleveland today, I can say, it should get there by Thursday. It is my expectation based on how the postal system normally works.
Relatable. And if the expectation is not met, we usually feel surprised or frustrated. The package should have been here yesterday. I wonder what went wrong.
Analytical. Notice the structure you just used there. Should have been. That is an advanced form. It describes an expectation in the past that did not happen. We use should have followed by the past participle.
Thoughtful. Ah, yes! The language of regret. I should have studied more for that exam. It means I did not study enough, and now I realize it was a mistake.
Philosophical and empathetic. Regret is a heavy emotion. It ties back to the pain we were discussing earlier. As people get older, say in their 40s or 50s, they often look back at their lives through the lens of should have. Sober, they say. I should have saved more money for retirement, or I should have spent more time with my parents when they were healthy. That insecurity of aging is universal.
Since it truly is. When you are younger, you feel like you have infinite time to make the right choices. As you age, the realization that time is limited makes every should have feel like a missed opportunity.
Encouraging, but that is why understanding the flexibility of should is beautiful. You cannot change the past. But going forward, you can realize that a should is a choice, not a life sentence, guiding the conversation. Let us shift back to must for a moment. We established that native speakers use have to for daily necessities. So, when do Americans actually use must in a positive conversational way?
Enthusiastic. We use it for very strong, enthusiastic recommendations. If I go to a restaurant in the short north and the food is incredible, I will tell my friends, you must try the new bakery. Their bread is amazing.
Validating. Exactly. In that context, must is not a legal rule. It is just a highly emotional way of saying, this is so good, you cannot miss it. The tone of voice is usually very excited. Informative. We also use it to express strong logical deductions. If someone has been running a marathon for 4 hours, you might look at them and say, you must be exhausted.
Agreeing and adding examples. Yes, it means I am almost certain this is true based on the evidence. If my dog barks at the window, I might say, the mail carrier must be here.
Summarizing. That is a brilliant addition. So we have must for rules, must for strong recommendations, and must for logical certainty. Context is everything in English. Direct and profound. Before we finish up, I want to ask our listeners a direct question. Think about your life right now. Are you carrying a burden because you think you must do something when really it is only a should?
Encouraging and warm. That is a very powerful question. For anyone listening, remember, that language can trap you, but it can also set you free. Give yourself permission to convert some of those musts into shoulds.
Appreciative? Absolutely. Grammar is not just about passing a test. It is about how we process the world around us. Harper, thank you for sharing your personal insights today. It added so much depth to our conversation.
Grateful, thank you for inviting me, Alex. I really enjoyed exploring the psychology behind these small but powerful words with you.
Inviting participation. To our listeners, if you found this discussion valuable, please try writing a sentence in the comments. Tell us one thing you should do for your health and one rule you must follow at your job. Warm and concluding, practicing the structure is the only way to build confidence. We read your comments and we appreciate your dedication to learning. Take care of yourselves. Stay warm out there. And I will see you in the next episode.